Hi guys, welcome back to Ana Dialogue, the dialogue on analog music reproduction. This is a very special episode because I'm going to tell you how I became an audiophile. Ready? Let's go. Okay, guys, so we're gonna go through 5 main stages of my life and how I slowly became an audiophile, and also why I decided all of a sudden to do this channel. So, this is indeed a special episode because I'm gonna tell a lot of personal stuff and my personal experience, how I got into music, why I got so involved and it engaged me so much with this final output, I would say, besides all of this madness around me. Okay, let's start. Okay, phase number 1, how I got into music. Well, we have to go back all the way to the 80s when I was just a little kid. And I remember precisely, and I'm shocked how clearly I remember this, is that my mother was waiting. My mother is American, and I grew up in Italy. Was waiting for this box of cassettes from the States that was supposed to come. We're back in the 80s, guys. The postage were expensive and very slow. No Amazon Prime there. And she was waiting and waiting for this package that was supposed to arrive much more earlier. So I was kind of worried. What's in there? What's happening? Why isn't it arriving? When it finally arrived, she was so happy because she was missing from the States for like 10 years or something like that. She was going every once in a while, but it's not like living there anymore because she married here. My dad, who is Italian, and that's how I was born. So she was missing her music desperately. She grew up mainly in the 50s and 60s, so you can imagine, a golden age. So when finally this pack arrived and she opened it up, it was filled with cassettes, filled with oldies, 50s and 60s, of all those minor, we could say, artists of that period, like Jerry Lewis, which is not minor, obviously, Fats Domino, The Platters, I don't know, Bill Haley, Mamas and Papas, the Turtles, and lots more. Obviously, there's so many, and I had all these flavors all of a sudden because I was used to pop music coming from the television, mainly from in Italy, or from the radio. There wasn't that much of foreign music. So I was mainly focused on Sanremo, the Festival of Sanremo, which was a famous, which is still today one of the most important festivals of music. And in the 80s, it created a lot of special tunes, which I still carry with me and inside me. But those special cassettes with that, I remember that sort of a drawing of a jukebox. Oh, baby. That changed me inside. I started to listen to them together with Mom, and I just built up this slowly, and not strong, but built up this passion for that kind of music, along with obviously the one coming from Italy. In this same phase, obviously, I was also listening a lot of 45s, of singles. We had big stacks. No hi-fi procedures there, just one naked on top of the other, all scratched, as you can imagine. A few albums, not that much, because my father and my mother already got rid of them, unfortunately. Also to start up their businesses. So we didn't have that much music. We had a lot of singles and cassettes mainly, and a few albums, records, as I said. And at a certain point, my mother wanted me to start playing an instrument because you have to play an instrument. So I decided, I think she decided for me to play the piano. So that was also a first hard impact on how music is structured. Now we're already talking toward the ends of the 80s. And I remember this terrible teacher who took off his shoes, putting his feet on the piano. He also had a hole in his sock, smelly, telling me what to do. Just bored. It was terrible, and I had to do all these work at home. Terrible. So that was my first impact on trying to produce music, which really got me far away from that, and I left that aside, and also probably a little bit music. I was a little traumatized, I would say, from that. This, more or less, is my first phase. Let's see what comes after. Okay, my second phase isn't that long as the first one, but something special happened. We're at the beginning of the 90s, and my parents buy this new, because we had a pretty old, cheap, new compact stereo from Sony, which is really nothing special, but at that time for me it was amazing, beautiful, nice and new. It had everything. We had this old Philips turntable, but apart from that, the Sony had these nice little small speakers, but the sound was very clear and crisp, and that obviously with a cassette, with CDs and everything, radio, but the quality was so different from our last compact stereo. This one was really good sounding. So I started to understand finally the huge difference from a cheapo compact stereo and a slightly better compact stereo. In my eyes, it was phenomenal, fantastic, obviously. So that was already a little seed planted into me that started to grow afterwards with the upgrades, with how good quality gear can change completely your experience in music listening. So let's proceed. Phase 3, CD revolution. Now we're right in the 90s. I'm starting to be a little older, starting to go to high school, and CDs just changed everything. Because as I explained in several videos, we were used to crappy cassettes on crappy stereos, recording crappy stuff out of the radio, or maybe a not so good quality dub from a friend, and the records were scratched. We didn't have good cartridges. Obviously, it was just the standard cartridge coming from a very low quality turntable. So if you put all this together, it's easy to understand why in a normal family, when they brought in a CD player, oh my God, you had popular, simple, immediate, a jump in quality. Because if you use a CD with that old analog crappy stuff, of course it's going to sound better. And it's not that much expensive. It was a little expensive in those times. Not that much expensive as one would think. So rapidly, everyone started to go on CDs. If we're talking about software instead, oh baby, every CD was very, very expensive and really hard to achieve. I mean, it was a special moment. It's probably not like when my mother was buying records in the 60s, where she had to earn her money or put it away for a month or so to get a record. But we're close to that. I mean, I remember like 20,000 lira, almost 20 euro, about $25 or something like that. Sorry, I keep itching my nose. When I'm nervous and I think about stuff, I keep doing that. And I just remember that every time I was able to buy a CD, it was like a reward. It was like winning a battle. I was so happy. And that's a key in appreciating music. We didn't have Spotify, obviously. We didn't have internet. We didn't have nothing to know what was on that record, if not some review, or mainly, because nobody was reading reviews, not at that age, or mainly on the radio or the top 10 on television, or just friends telling, hey, it's good. And a lot of CDs, a lot of albums were crappy, after all. Were just one hit, one single, which was cool. And obviously we bought singles also of CD albums. They were much cheaper. But then you had only one or two songs. So in any case, that was a fundamental stage to, again, increase in quality, understand that. And it was the digital revolution craze. I mean, we all dropped our Walkmans, our records. Very sad moment. Even though, I mean, we had to go through that, as we had to go through, at least youngsters of today have to go through Spotify in order to reach then that vinyl revolution, which is coming at the end of this video. So it was a very special, particular, and non-analog time, but it was fundamental again. At that point, I remember also I was playing a little bit of the flute in high school. We had to do it. Didn't like it, didn't enjoy it. And on my own, a little later, I started guitar, but wasn't good at it. Wasn't constant in learning that. So, but again, that helps, I think, even if you're not good, to somehow see music, perceive music in a different way, and appreciate it also much more. Let's proceed. Okay, phase number 4. Probably one of the most important of all. Living on my own, as Freddie Mercury would say. Oh yes, we are at the beginning of the 2000s. Actually, already in 98, as soon as I was 18, I started to live on my own. But obviously it took some time to set up my place and start going to the university, etc. And I started to explore different parts, different things of my life, and also music. And finally I was able to buy my own, after quite a while actually, my own compact stereo. Again, we're talking about these huge compact stereos by Sony with tower speakers, which were terrible if I think about it now. Oh my God, just terrible quality. Those huge CDs changers where you had 5 CDs inside, all connected, which it looked like you had a preamp and a power amp and a tuner and things like that. No, it was all combined together, and it just gave the sensation of a true hi-fi stereo, but it wasn't. I didn't know anything about that yet. But I was finally taking a step in my own setup. And in that phase, a lot of special things started to happen. First of all, my music taste got better, got to a more mature point. And that is also fundamental, because if you start listening and understanding higher, if we could say higher quality music like jazz, classical music, or even special kinds of pop music, etc., at that point you're getting more interested in the quality of the timbre, of the transients, even though I have no idea of those terms at that point, but just the sound of the instruments and of music was enjoyable beyond the rhythm, the catchy rhythm. Remember, I did a whole video on critical listening. If you haven't seen it, take a look. Here's a link. And at that point, I finally started to understand the concept of upgrading / quality. Yes, I did understand that when my parents, as I said, got that new stereo, but that was a huge new stereo. It had to be good. But I started to change, for example, a cable, a power strip, and things amazingly changed dramatically. I was not expecting that. As I said during one of my last videos on cables, if you haven't seen it, here's a link. Night and day difference in my little crappy stereo. And at that point, obviously, I got the trigger, which leads us to our next point. But I also want to highlight, while in this phase, I also played for 2 years the drums. I studied playing the drums, so I really got into that. I still have my nice setup. I am not good at it, but again, another tentative approach to try to produce music and not only enjoy it. But I think they're both sides of the medal sometimes, and that's why I got so much inside hi-fi and music listening in general. Let's proceed. Phase 5, hi-fi revelation. Oh yes. We are in the second half of the year 2000s, and I finally had access to more data. I did some research. We finally, internet was started to being big. There's much more information. I started to buy hi-fi magazines, which were extremely expensive. I remember that, but there was so much information, and that is one of the key points where I started to open my mind and understand that, for example, hi-fi is not Sony, Panasonic, Philips. No. They were maybe in the past, but not today. In fact, I made a huge mistake. I remember buying this in a huge commercial center, a Harman Kardon amplifier. Wow, yeah, Harman Kardon. But Harman Kardon was famous in the 70s. Now it's completely consumer stuff, not good at all. It was practically a receiver for home theater, and I was completely depressed because I made my first jump in hi-fi and I made a huge mistake. So it took a while to put away some money, and finally I made the leap, which was the huge revelation, getting an AVI Laboratory Series amplifier from the UK, and shortly after a pair, thanks also to my dad, I must admit, an ATC SCM35 loudspeakers. Ooh, and shortly after that, again, a few years after, I would say, 1 or 2 years, something like that, Clear Audio Emotion package turntable. Wow. Finally, I understood what was hi-fi and how good these components can sound. Even though they do cost an arm and a leg, they bring you at a whole different level. And finally, I was starting again to appreciate analog. Well, that's already started in the first part of the year 2000s. But again, here with this jump in quality of the gear, I really started to understand the potential of vinyl, and I started also to explore reel-to-reel tapes. For example, I got this baby off of eBay for $300 when there was no reel-to-reel resurgence or vinyl resurgence yet. Nope, that's why in fact it cost so cheap. And also a lot of pre-recorded tapes I got was very cheap, and now there's crazy prices. In any case, that was a fundamental point, as you can imagine. Practically the most important, I would say, where I really took a step in the hi-fi world, and that we could say that an audiophile was born. Okay, my final stage is a deep dive. At that point, I really started to explore hi-fi. First of all, music genres, everything. I mean, I couldn't care less more of pop of the top 10 anymore. I was just trying to find the most strange and esoteric types of bands of music from different places, countries. It was so fun. It's so stimulating. It was an incredible period. And at the same time, slowly, with my few money putting it away, I tried to change my components, upgrade them, a lot of upgrades, cables, power conditioners, and things like that, and vibration controls, decoupling systems, and things like that, which really started to give me this polished type of sound, which I was reading on these journals, and I really wanted to obtain and have in my system. I didn't have a great environment, but I also tried to move around my stereo, things like that. I mean, and at that point, obviously, we're going towards the vinyl resurgence. I finally had so many vinyl records available, every band, every type of music. Cassettes also, as you know, started to turn back, and at a certain point, as you all know, 3 years ago, I decided to activate, create, and a dialogue. Well, okay guys, here I am. That's the story of how I became an audiophile. And I think it's fair at this point to say, for those of you who are interested in my name, in my real name, which up until now I preferred not to say for various reasons, but I think it's time to just tell you what is my real name, which is Guido. Nice to meet you guys. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed this very personal and intimate video. Remember, music is born analog. Ciao belli! Well guys, if you're enjoying my videos and you're enjoying my channel, please consider to subscribe by clicking the black and white logo here below. Also, don't forget to click the notification bell so you'll never miss an episode and you will become a true member of the analog community.